Hi, this is Lucky Smith with Star Over News Magazine. Today is September 16th of 2012, and I'm here with
Maddie Lemons.
And your name again? I'm sorry. Maddie Lemons. Okay, Maddie. And Maddie, I understand that you know Raynard Vallery very well. Can you?
Yes.
How long have you known him?
For over 30 years.
For over 30 years? And
Yes.
what is your relationship to Mr. Raynard?
Well, I'm like his adoptive mom, not legally adoptive, but I've known him, like I said, since he was probably about 17, 18 years old. And he's always called me Mom.
And so you were around during the event that transpired for Raynard that's currently serving life in prison, correct?
Yes, I was.
And were you called, being that you were so close to him, were you called to trial to be a character witness for Raynard?
I wasn't.
Is there a reason why? Did you talk to the detectives? Did the detectives approach you, or?
I spoke with the person. I believe he was a detective. They came out and did an interview with me, and that was the last that I ever heard from him.
And what is, alright, so that's that way we understand, what involvement do you believe that Raynard had with the murders?
As far as the actual murder, I don't think he had. I know he didn't have anything to do with it, as Guy Ross was the one that told me that he parked out. He was there. But at the time of the murder, from what I understand, Raynard had left and went outside of the store.
And what was, like, you say you've known Raynard since he was 17. You're still in contact with him now. He calls you mom. You adopted him. Number one, why would you adopt someone that wasn't your son? Like, what was it about Raynard that made you want to take him under your wing?
Okay, the very first time that I met Raynard, he was walking down the street. He was angry because someone had said something to him, and I guess he was on his way to go retaliate. And my two daughters were with me, and they were approximately around the same age, and we just kind of told him, you don't want to go do that, and we invited them to come over to where we lived, and they just sit outside and they talked, and from that moment on, from that very first meeting and that time on, we just hit it off.
And what type of person was Raynard?
A very funny person. He would help to do anything, as far as when he would be at our house, whatever needed to be done, washing dishes, whatever it was. He didn't mind pitching in. He was a very funny person, liked to sit up and talk and laugh, and he's a very nice person, very carefree,
And what type of, like, for him to want to have a dual family, what was his own mother? Were they around, or his family?
Yes, they
okay.
were around. I never met his real mother or father, but they were around in his life. He had a lot of sisters, and I believe the only brother that he has lives in Louisiana, if I'm not mistaken, but he had a lot of sisters. And I don't know, it was just something about him, because I don't have any sons. I have 4 daughters. So it was just something about him that just kind of made us click.
And how often would he be at your house during...
Every day.
He was at your house every day?
Every day.
Wow.
There was only a day that he wasn't there. He would be there at some point of the day, every day. At one point, during that time, I believe he lived around the corner with his sister, but he would be at my house every single day.
And was this just to eat or do chores, or?
Yeah, he help out doing anything. If, like I said, if trash needed to go out, if dishes needed to be washed, whatever it was, you know, he would just willingly do it. We didn't have to ask him to take the trash out. And there were other guys, you know, my nephews were in the house, and it wasn't something that we had to ask him to do. It was just that he would kind of pass through, so he'd need to go out, pick it up, take it out. You know, it was just something he would do naturally.
And would you mind sharing with us maybe one of your fondest memories of Raynard?
It was a lot of them. It was so many of them, but I think the fondest one that it was kind of funny is my oldest daughter and him went out one day and decided they were both over 8, well, I guess at least 18 at that time, and they went out and bought a bottle of wine, and she got drunk and he had to bring her home, and he knew he was going to get in trouble because they were together. And he kind of came in giving an excuse before I even knew she was drunk, you know. But it wasn't funny at the time, but after listening to him trying to explain that he had nothing to do with it and he tried to tell her, it kind of got to be a little comical, you know. But, I mean, it was so many things. I mean, so many times he was around so much and we had so much fun together, him and all the girls and like I said, my nephews. It was just like one big family. It was my mom's house, and it was like one big happy, you know, everyone was just around and we were just happy.
And let's go back to 1989, where Raynard was arrested and you first found out. How did you find out, or how did, I mean, what was your reaction?
I can tell you how that happened. It was one morning, well, actually, a few days, a week or so before that time, I had sit down and I had told Raynard, because his friend, Guy, was his very best childhood friend. He said they had been friends since childhood. And it was just something about Guy, it had something to do with a car and a girlfriend that he had. And he was racing the car down the street. And I just kind of told Raynard, I told him, I said, you know, you need to cut him loose because he's going to get you in trouble. And he was like, oh, we've been friends since we were kids. He you know, he's just crazy like that. But I had told him that. But anyway, one evening, Guy came over and he was kind of nervous, you know. And we were asking him, you know, what's wrong with you? And he was sitting up at the table. It was me and my niece and my 3 daughters, I believe, was at the table. And he was sitting up there and he started talking about a robbery that they had did, or were attempting to do. And he said
How old were they at this time?
I think, I'm thinking probably anywhere between 18, 19, no more than 20, I'm sure.
Okay.
I'm not quite sure because that's been
They were just
so long
babies.
ago. But he was sitting at, Guy came over. I didn't see Raynard that day. Guy was over and he was sitting up and he was talking about a robbery that they had planned to do. And the liquor store that they went to was over in a neighborhood where Raynard and Guy's family lived. So from my understanding, what he told us is they went to the store to rob the store, and the guy told them to leave and don't come back in because he knew them. So at that point, Guy grabbed the man and took him to the back. Raynard was in the store, had the lady up in the front, and Guy came out of the back room and he had blood over him, and he grabbed the lady and was trying to make her open the cash register and tell him where the money was. And Raynard told him, man, come on, let's go. And Raynard left out of the store. He was standing outside of the store. And I guess at that point, that's when the lady was killed. 2 little girls came in the store and seen all this commotion going on, and they ran out. So we were sitting there, and when Guy was telling us what had happened, we asked, we call him Drac. When we asked him where was Drac, and he said Drac talked out. heard the story because Guy had already told us that, what had happened. And it was a couple of days later that they had arrested Raynard, and from that point on, the cops came out and they interviewed us, my niece and my daughter and myself, and we told them what we had heard, what Guy Ross had told us, and that was the end of that. We never heard from him again. And a couple of years later, I had moved over on St. Charles, and another guy, I guess it was an officer, came out, undercover officer, or detective or whatever, came out and asked, the same questions. I told him the very same thing, and I believe at that time my niece was staying with me, and they got her statement, and that was the last we ever heard from him.
And being that Raynard, since he was like 17, was every day at your house, did you find it strange that you weren't called up to be a character witness, that you weren't...
I found it very strange, and I kept asking him, because I've been in contact with him from the day that he first went to, when he was in county jail, all the way up until, even today. I still, as a matter of fact, I just talked to him not too long ago. But I found it very strange, and I kept asking him when were they going to get in contact with us, and he didn't know when they would get in contact with us, but he was telling me that, he had told them they could get in contact with me and my daughter and my niece, and no one, I found it very strange because, like I said, he was at my house, I could just about say every day.
And then Guy came to your house without him.
Without him, yes.
And talked to you about what happened the night that this happened. This is like
the next day.
The next day, but still, it's still within relative enough time for it to hold. I just don't understand why not every witness was called in.
I've wondered that myself often, and I don't have an answer to that. But like I said, he was at our house, and as a matter of fact, that very same day that he told us that, I was getting ready to go to work because I'm a nurse, and I was getting ready to go to work, and I was going to catch the bus, and he wanted to ride the bus with me, and I was so afraid because he just had that crazy kind of attitude, and I was like, no. I went to Vermont and caught the bus where usually I would catch it down Normandy, but I just did not want to be around him because I believed it. At first I thought he was lying to us, but then after we got the phone call and Raynard told us that something had happened, then that's when I knew, something had actually happened. And I asked Raynard, I said, did you have anything to do with killing those people? And he told me, no, Mama, I did not. And I believe he has never, as far as I know, lied to me, and his story has always remained the same. And I find that if you ask the person something over and over again and you keep getting the same answer over and over again after all these years, it has to be the truth. It's kind of hard to remember a lie.
Very much so.
Yes.
And another question I have as well is, is this something, was Raynard ever violent? Was he a type of, did this seem like, were you in shock when you found out?
I was very much in shock. I could see Guy doing what happened, but Raynard never. Like I said, he was always laughing, always just full of life and a lot of fun. That was just always him, ever since I've known him. And as I stated before, when we first met him, he was angry because, I don't know if you ever met him or not, but he was angry, I think, because someone had called him black. And he is very dark. And he was angry about it, but we told him, come on, you don't want to go strutting. Come on over to the house. And my girls introduced themselves, and they all hit it off. They were like sisters and brothers. It was never him wanting to date one of my daughters or anything. They were always like sister and brother, from that moment. So no, he was always full of life, full of fun, fun to be around. I trusted him in my house. He could come over and knock on the door in the evening or if he wanted to spend the night, he could knock on the door and come in, and he would find a spot on the couch or wherever, and it was never a worry about, is he going to steal anything, is he going to hurt anyone? It was never that.
And also, are you surprised that the detective that came and interviewed you is now in prison? I mean,
well, I found out about that, and I was kind of surprised that, because, I know there are crooked cops, but I was just kind of surprised that, he happened to be one of them. Not that I knew him personally or anything, but just that, yes, it was surprising, because, after a while you see that none of the evidence, nobody were coming to question me or my daughter or calling us to court. We all, like I said, we were all waiting to go to court, and no one ever came forth, and we didn't know why,
Did Raynard's attorney ever contact you?
I can never recall an attorney contacting us. Only person I remember ever contacting me was I guess that was the detective, and and if it was anybody, I don't know whether it was for Raynard or whether it was just, prosecutors. I'm not sure who they were there for, but there was never an attorney that came out and sit down and talked to me, to my knowledge.
And during the trial, you were there, how did you feel when the verdict came in and it was not guilty? Not guilty. I'm sorry, guilty.
Not guilty.
How did you feel when the verdict came in and it was guilty?
I was heartbroken. I really was. I felt that the one thing that Raynard always thought was Guy would tell the truth and cut him loose, and it never happened. He always said, he's going to tell the truth, he'll tell him, and I'll get out, and it never happened. But no, we were all shocked that he was sentenced to life without. It was very heartbreaking.
And how do you feel now learning that the same detectives and the same prosecutors and everyone within that department, three of their previous cases, 2 before Raynard, 1 after Raynard, were overturned due to wrongful conviction because of the evidence and the witnesses that they had harassed in order to get a conviction?
Well, I really think that he should have another trial because, as I was told, one of the young ladies that was with them or the night that this was supposed to have been planned out or talked about was threatened by one of the officers, and that's why she never came forward, or whatever her statement wasn't the truth. I know things like that happen, but it was kind of a shock, that I was actually living, an actual event that was happening the same way with cops threatening someone,
And do you think there was a reason why Detective Arneson was threatening some witnesses and not others? Like, he didn't threaten you, but at the same time, he didn't call you to be a witness. Is it because you feel that you're educated? Everyone else that I've pretty much have investigated, he seems like the ones that they call him for witnesses, they were very young and...
Right. Yeah. I think that's one of the reasons probably that I nor my daughters were called in, because number one, I don't think he could have frightened us into not telling what we knew and telling the truth about it. I don't think there was any way that he would have been able to, for lack of another word, bully us into saying something else. There was no threat to us like I guess he put toward the young lady. It was no threat to us that he could come to us and say, well, if you don't say this, or if you don't say he did that, we'll do something to you, because I have nothing to hide. I'm a taxpayer, educated person, and I would have reported it, So I guess that's one of the reasons why he he never came and talked to us, or, you know, we weren't threatened in any way. It's just that what we told the person that came out, they never called us in the court.
Yes, because the witnesses that they had was one person was known police informant who had a very heavy drug addiction, and then another one was a woman who,
Teresa, I believe that was her name.
Yeah.
She was very young, and I think, if I'm not, I don't know if she was a runaway at the time or whatever. I don't know what her situation was, but I do know that she was afraid, you know, to actually say what happened, and I think they coerced her into saying whatever it is that they wanted her to say.
Well, 1989 in LA, I mean, it's very different now from the way. Can you give me an idea? Because like I'm a lot younger than, so I really don't recall any of this. So can you give me an idea of what 1989 was like in Los Angeles with the LAPD? I mean, so we have
back in 1989, it was pretty much. It's not that much changed, except now we have a couple of law enforcement officers that will come out and speak the truth. But back then, I mean, you know, that was during the time that crack cocaine had hit Los Angeles very heavily, and the prisons and jails were being built to mainly house African American men. A lot of the African American men went to prison, some of them for reasons that they should, some for just the fact that, you know, they were on the street at the wrong time, you know. So, I mean, it was a time when, pretty much like now, you know, they were getting arrested, you know, it was just out there, no chances. If I'm not, well, the three strikes law came out way after that, but
1994.
During that time, they were getting long sentences for things that probably wouldn't have required to be that long. I had a cousin that got like 5 years for a bag of marijuana.
A bag of.
Yeah. So, you know.
And now you can smoke weed with a medical card. That's wow.
Well, now they have medical cards. This was back then when it was just something right after the hippie days, you know, and what have you. And he got caught with a bag of marijuana, and he got 5 years. So, you know,
because
it was just sentences that they were giving out.
And were cops? I mean, because like what surprises me is that there's so many cases being overturned, you know, through DNA testing and whatnot, and we're learning that so many cops lied. I mean, why is it that they were able to get away with these lies back then? Was it just nobody questioned the LAPD, or?
Exactly, nobody was questioning the LAPD. Law was law, and the LAPD was the law. And as I recall, because we've often asked if there was any, I don't believe they ever found any blood of Raynard's or any blood on his clothing or anything of that sort.
And these individuals, the victims that did die, from my understanding, from what I'm reading with the courts, they were stabbed to death. So.
Yes, they were. It was a gruesome scene.
And
as far as if someone, I mean, they found the clothing of guys in his mom's backyard, I believe, in the trash can along with the knife or whatever. And had Raynard been involved in it in any kind of way, when they found him and his shoes that he had on, there was no blood on his tennis shoes, there was no blood on his clothing.
So they found guys' clothing with blood, but they never found Raynard's.
Right.
And and these people were stabbed to death. So how is it that nothing squirted on Raynard if he was involved?
Right. That's what I'm saying. And it's kind of impossible to stab a person. I mean, I saw the pictures of the crime scene, and for someone to have been stabbed that many times, it would be impossible for him not to have had any kind of blood of his or of the victims on himself, or him cutting himself because because that was such a gruesome crime, you know. And
Do you recall how many times the victims were stabbed?
I cannot even imagine Raynard doing anything like that. No kind of way.
And how many times were the victims stabbed? Just so the audience has an idea of.
Oh God, I'm not actually sure. It's been I read the report a long time ago, but I'm sure it was like over 40, maybe 50 times.
So, for an individual to stab somebody 40, 50 times, and they were in the room, blood had to have splattered on him. And it's just weird that there's no blood.
He would definitely have had to have some kind of blood on him. I believe the man that was killed was murdered in the back part of the store, and the lady was killed by the cash register. And either way, he would have had to have some kind of blood on his shoes, on his clothing, on some part of him. It would have had to have some kind of blood, you know.
And also the fact is, do you find it surprising that Raynard is willing to take a DNA test to clear his name, and he's being denied? How do you feel about that?
I think that they don't want him to do that because they would then find out that he actually wasn't in there at the time that it happened. Now, that's what I truly believe, that they just don't want this evidence to come forward. If they had some DNA of him, they would be more than willing to bring it out, but I've never even heard of them having any type of DNA, no kind of blood, no kind of anything. The two young girls that was that went into the store had already testified. I believe that he was outside of the store when they went in, and he left out. He told us that, you know, he told Guy to come on, let's go, because these people knew them, and he told him, come on, let's go. And Guy took the guy the man in the back room, and then he came out and he grabbed the lady. Raynard was out of the store at the time that happened.
And you heard this from the actual. This is coming out of Guy's mouth, and Guy's the person who actually committed these murders.
Yes. Yes, he's the one that actually told me and my daughter and my niece, my daughters and my niece. And if I have one daughter that lives here now. If I gave you the telephone numbers of my niece and of my other daughters, they could. At this time, I'm almost certainly sure they could probably tell you the exact same thing that I'm telling you. If you called them within a minute after talking to me and started interviewing them, I'm sure they would give you the exact same story.
Well, I will be more happy to interview them. I want to interview everyone involved in this, and it's just strange because being that you actually heard a confession and you were not called in.
Exactly.
Do you think, why didn't they call you in? What do you think they didn't want you as a character witness?
They didn't want us as a character witness because I think they wanted to nail both of them for the same crime, the crime of murder. Now, what would Raynard be guilty of? And that's probably the night that they may have set up and talked about going to do a robbery. I mean, that was only talk, but the actual carrying out of what happened, he had nothing to do with it. And I just believe that they wanted to just hang both of them at that time, you know.
Okay, and just so we have an idea, you are, what was your profession before you retired? Just so we can understand.
I'm not retired yet.
Oh.
No, I'm still working.
Oh, okay. Well, what is your profession?
I'm a clinical care partner. It's like a nurse's assistant.
So you went to college and you are educated, and
I went to junior college. I didn't go to a university. I went to a junior college, and I consider myself very educated. I'm not a lawbreaker. I'm a taxpayer. I've been a homeowner, you know. I mean.
So it's not like you had. I mean, because if you look at the witnesses, when you read the transcripts on the trial, everyone else is kind of edgy, questionable. I just wonder why they just did not call you in. I mean, that's where I'm just kind of. I find it strange that.
I do too. But I other reason to know why they did not call me in. I have no other reason other than to say, like I said, my daughters have never been in trouble, you know, as far as going to prison or anything. They were all employable, and my niece the same way. So, I mean, we weren't like ignorant people, you know, and like I said, I don't think they could have had us to persuade us to say anything different, you know, than what actually happened.
Thank you very much. And I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna end the interview now. Thank you again for your time, and I will send you a copy of the article. And this is Lucky Smith signing off. Thank you.